this is a common problem where people are ambitious, they want more, they want to take on more, they want to be rewarded for their efforts. And if firm owners don't have a structure in place to kind of guide people along that path, then they might lose hope and move somewhere else where they do get that title change or the salary bump.
Hey, Growth Tech, welcome back. I am your host, Tyler Sumla, and we have reached the final episode of Season 4, where we dive into the top 10 challenges that I hear from firm owners most often. So if you have enjoyed this season, please just take a moment to subscribe and leave a review so that I know it is helpful for you. Today, I've invited my friend, Caitlin Brady, to chat about how to motivate and retain talent. She shares great perspectives from both the employee and employer perspective, mapping out exactly how to progress in your career and keep your best talent in-house. And before we jump in, a huge thanks to our friends at the American Institute of Steel Construction for sponsoring Season 4 of the Growth Tech podcast. Here is a fun fact for you. Did you know all domestically produced steel beams and columns are 100% recyclable and contain, on average, 92% recycled content? You can learn more about sustainable steel at aisc.org/sustainable. That is aisc.org/sustainable. Check it out, and let's go ahead and jump in. Caitlin, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to dive into this because I'm so often speaking with firm owners, and they're bringing up something along the lines of like they're really happy with the talent that they have in their firm, but they're struggling to keep them engaged, right? Because this talent that they have that they want to retain is, always asking kind of about like what's more, right? Like what do I need to do to get promoted, to get more responsibilities, to continue moving up? And it seems to be a challenge, I think, for smaller firms because, there's only so many places to move.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about what your initial reaction to that is.
Yeah, Tyler, that's something I hear a lot, depending on the firm size. So I have worked in small firms. I think the smallest one I worked in was about 15, 17 people. But I've also largely, for most of my career, have worked in gigantic corporate firms. So the structure is a little bit different, but on the podcast Architectette, I do talk to a lot of firm leaders, both at large firms and small firms, and these are things that come up often. There are only so many places that you can or any roles that you can have in a firm. And I think that this is a common problem where people are ambitious, they want more, they want to take on more, they want to be rewarded for their efforts. And if firm owners don't have a structure in place to kind of guide people along that path, then they might lose hope and move somewhere else where they do get that title change or the salary bump. So from what I have heard, I think it's most important to have a structure, right? Of what does a promotion look like? What are people asking for? And I hear, I think, from people asking for promotions a little bit more of kind of like what their strategies are. So those folks are looking for either the title change. I think that's like the most basic one. They're looking for a salary increase. They're maybe looking for additional perks or flexibilities in the office, or they're looking for more responsibilities. And so I think if firm owners can have a system in place to structure all of those things or kind of have rungs that people can climb, that's going to be the clearest way that they can kind of strategize and then guide people and then offer kind of incentives to get that next bump up based upon what their interests are.
Yeah. This got me so much more excited to dive into the conversation because this is going to simultaneously be like, what's going to continue to motivate your existing talent. But I think this is also going to be a helpful conversation for like attracting future talent too, right? Recruiting and these things, because it all kind of ties together. But I'm so excited to have you on Caitlin Brady, Architectette podcast, right? And I thought of you initially as I was pulling these questions together, because when I saw this come up as being something that's kind of commonly discussed with my firm owners, you came to mind immediately because I know that you are constantly talking to and interviewing other leaders in the architecture industry, those that have moved up in their career quickly, those that are also other firm owners. And so I thought it'd be great to bring you into this conversation. But, that is a lame attempt at an introduction for you. But yeah, tell us a little bit about what you're doing over at Architectette.
Sure. I don't think that was a lame intro. I appreciate that. So I'm an architect. I work at a firm in DC. I have, 12, 13 years of experience in the industry now. I started at Drexel. I did their 2+4 Bachelor of Architecture program, worked for some firms in Philly, went to California for a bit, did a digital nomad year, and now I'm based in the DC area. So along the way, picked up a podcast, and I think women in architecture is a huge passion of mine to advocate for women, to provide mentorship, encouragement, and also just knowledge sharing.
Did you start the podcast during your nomad year?
I did, yes.
You did? Oh, no kidding. Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
That's a fun outcome from that. Yeah.
Yeah, I am a big people person, and I love joining local groups. I've always been involved in the AIA. I've always had a big community around me. And when I was traveling, which was very fun, adventurous, I loved trying different cities for a month at a time, but I felt like I couldn't tap into any local chapter or activities or local community because by the time I'd find out about something, I was either on to the next city or the scheduling didn't work out. I had just missed it or it was just after I left. So and at the same time, I was onboarding to my firm as a digital or as a remote employee. And so I had been doing coffee chats with people and I felt that quick conversations, hearing about people's roles, responsibilities, their background, their history was a great way to get to know people. And I felt like I learned a lot from those conversations. And so I thought, oh, maybe for people who also can't tap into a local chapter or they're remote or they have life obligations, a podcast would be a great way that they can listen into these conversations and also get a little bit from those conversations.
Yeah. I find that so often with speaking with other podcasters. It's like the goal at the beginning was to have some kind of excuse to have these conversations, right? And to continue to learn. I mean, it was the same for me. It was like, you're already kind of having them partially or maybe not enough, and you just want to formalize it a little bit and learn for yourself too, because you're also curious. I think that's like at the core of every great podcast, I think, is the curiosity of the host, right?
Yes, I'm so curious. Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to be like, so how does that actually work though? So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. I love what you're doing with Architectette, and anyone that's listening here, if you enjoyed this podcast, I'm sure that you would love Architectette as well. So make sure that you go check that out too. I'd love to talk about why you think this is so common as an issue or as a question, right? And I think you kind of already touched on it, like from the side of the employee, right? Like, I mean, good employees, they're going to be motivated, right? So they're, naturally going to want to move forward. I think that part is obvious. But I'm curious on the side of, like, if we're talking about a firm owner or a firm leader, why you think, I would say, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's so common that they don't have a formal structure in place for something like this, and that it's kind of preventing them from retaining talent for long periods of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough from that perspective. In thinking about this question, I went back to one of my first jobs, which was working at Dairy Queen. And I remember in that first year, as I was onboarding, getting more responsibility, I kept getting like these little tiny raises. And I just thought it was like, oh my gosh, like they really see me and they respect me. And I was so thrilled to be recognized. It was like a quarter every time.
Yeah,
that was like my raise. And I was getting minimum wage at the time, which I think I started below minimum wage because I was like training. So it was like $6 an hour maybe. And then I guess I was making like $7.25, whatever it was. But because I had no expectations for advancement, right? There was the owner, it was his son who was the manager, and then we were all just front of house. The salary increase was the meaningful kind of carrot that I was going towards of like, okay, I'm doing the job, I'm, gaining more responsibility and this and that, like as much as one can in the front of a Dairy Queen. But those little things my expectations were aligned with what the job could offer. And so I think it's important for firm owners, firm leaders, when they hire to say, hey, these are the expectations. It would be impossible for firm leaders to promote everyone every year because at the end of 4 or 5 years, everyone would be a principal, right? And then there's no one doing the entry-level work, the grunt work, those things that we need folks to do. So to have a system of like, hey, we need you in this role for a certain amount of time or a certain amount of years. And like I saw this at my first job too, is I had worked there maybe like 2 or 3 years and was hoping like, okay, now is my time. I'm going to get a promotion. Like I just have to finish up these projects. And then I think the next one will be the next big one. But we had a huge influx of work and they hired a bunch of people right above me. And so they filled that need. I wasn't quite ready for that yet, but then I saw that, oh, they just brought in 4 or 5 people that are now 3 or 4 years ahead of me. I'm most likely going to need to stay in my role and do what I'm doing to serve that need in the company. So I think it's both the employers saying, hey, these are the expectations. We need folks to do the work. They have to be at these specific levels. And then also employees understand too, when they join a company or at their current company, the most important advice I think is to, before they're asking for a raise or promotion or whatever that bump is, to look around and go, is there room for this? Is there capacity? And then to start those conversations to really be open and honest about, okay, these are the things that are important to me. And I wrote them down, so I'm just going to look down. But it's the money, the experience, the title, or even more flexibility. And what are the possibilities to advance in whichever one of those are most important to the person? And then the firm owners have to be honest of like, there's no room, or, oh, there is a room. Let's make a plan for this.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's such a good point, though, to think that it's the setting of the expectations.
Yeah.
It almost all revolves around the setting of the expectations, right? Because if someone comes in thinking that they can do something quickly and realizing that there is already a structure in place that wasn't discussed during onboarding, and it's going to take at least a few years before you see any of that movement, that's going to be a bummer, I think. And I wouldn't be surprised if they end up looking somewhere else. What I really liked, though, about the example that you were talking about with your first job at Dairy Queen is like it's small, right? These are small improvements, but they were unexpected, right? And they gave you extra motivation. And I think that's a really good reminder for any firm owner, right? You have the things that are structured, like you're talking about. It's like, this is how long roughly you're going to have to be in this role. These are the things that we need to see in order to consider you for another position. And that's what, here's the different salary tiers. But I think there's another point of just like, happy surprises, that doesn't have to be significant, but because I feel like what's most common is, cool, I've hired this person. I won't have to worry about it again until, 6 months, 12 months down the line when we do a review. Right. And you don't, and like, as a leader, you kind of like offload that from your mind, right? And you're like, okay, I'll worry about it again over that period of time. But meanwhile, like that person is wondering if you're noticing, the things that they're doing and if they're doing the right things. And, do you care that they, stayed an extra hour to finish this project or things like that, right? And so they're noticing those. And so I really like that is like, it's not like it has to be dramatic, but it's like, it's outside of the normal structure. And maybe it's like a bump of like $1 an hour, right? But it's something that you see because they showed great, motivation and leadership and, something in their first few months. And like, you just want to show them that you recognize it. And I feel like the impact that has on that person is significant, I would imagine.
Yeah. And I would say know your employees too, right? Like if that extra special bonus that was unexpected, maybe it's like a t-shirt or merch or something, right? Are they going to be excited about that? Or would they have rather gotten like $1,000 deposited to their account or like a big gift card or something like that? I think some people are like, oh, they would love this mug. Let's reward them for their hard work with a paperweight or a mug or whatever. But it's like, oh, how much did that fancy paperweight cost? Like I would have taken the $50 and, got myself a nice meal or I don't know, something like that. So definitely know who you're working with and maybe what would be most valuable to them. But I also think too, you mentioned noticing the extra work. From my conversations, I would always assume that leadership is too busy. Now I'll talk to employees first, right? Assume leadership is too busy. Put a plan together where you're checking in, where you're establishing what are the goals that I need to hit. Look at, if you're going for a raise or promotion, look at what fair salaries are in your region. A lot of job postings now put the salary. The AIA, I think sometimes is off, just because they include such large swatches of geography and who's reporting these salaries. And then firms, why wouldn't they use that as leverage? Like, right? If someone's going to say, oh, I'll come in for a low number. Excellent.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah, it's working against the goal.
Yes. So yeah, look at job postings, look at the job description for your role, the role above you, make those lists of like, okay, these are the things I'm doing, concrete examples, and then these are the things I need to do talk to your employer, your manager of what do I need to do to hit these goals? And once I do, then how do things get in place? Yeah, like, will I hit them and you go, oh, we'll just give it another year? Or if I get my license, will I see that raise immediately, or will that be at the end of the year? And really talk about like what are the realities, and approach it with curiosity.
And I would even encourage, like, on the employee, I mean, I want to hear what you're going to say about on the firm side, but on the employee side, I do think it's important to like legitimize it, so to say, right? Like, I would get it in writing if you can. It doesn't necessarily have to be like another contract, but at least get them to, agree in some sense that like, okay, hey, after I do these things, we are at least going to have a conversation, right? It's going to be up for consideration. It's going to be hard to get someone to commit to like, you're going to do these things and automatically you're going to get a raise, right? I think that's probably an unrealistic expectation. But to say that, like, to always be working towards something and to know what it is that you're working towards, I think is super important, because otherwise you will lose motivation. You're going to start looking other places. You're going to start thinking about other things. And so, formalize it a little bit.
Yes, I have talked to some people. The person I'm thinking of is Annie Rowland, who she recently retired as a partner at FX Collaborative in New York. And she was saying that no one assumed that she wanted to make it to partner. And so she said people like years younger than her were being promoted, and she was kind of like, well, what's going like? And then they're like, oh, we didn't even know that you wanted that. So I think it's definitely important for employers to ask like, hey, what are your goals and aspirations? Like, where do you want to end up? But also for employees to have a response when that happens, not just go, I don't know, like I want to keep learning. And if you're in I don't know world, you're going to stay in I don't know world for as long as it takes to clarify what you want. So to have that plan, vocalize what you want, even if you're not ready for that, but then at least employers are thinking about, okay, this is a goal of theirs. I need them to do X, Y, Z to make it there.
Yeah. Spot on impersonation, by the way. But to your point, it also, then at least you have something to, as an employee, you have something to measure against, right? Like if your employer isn't holding up their end of that bargain, well, I mean, you have pretty clear indication that they're probably not going to hold up things in the future either. And maybe you should look elsewhere. All right, Growth Techs, check this out. In Boulder and Atlanta, old buildings came down, but their steel beams did not go to waste. They went straight into new projects. And that is the power of US-made structural steel. So here is how it works. Instead of relying on virgin iron and blast furnaces, we actually use modern technology to melt recycled scrap in electric arc furnaces. And that produces 6 million tons of the most sustainable steel in the world every single year. And the carbon footprint keeps shrinking. It's already down 12% in the last 3 years. And as our power grid moves toward renewables, it'll keep falling. Steel is strong, it lasts for decades, and it can be reused over and over without losing quality. It is a natural fit for adaptive reuse and for sustainable design. And if you want to put it to work, then download the free sustainability toolkit from our sponsor at aisc.org/buildgreen. That is aisc.org/buildgreen. One word there at the end. Go and check it out, and we'll get back to the show. Okay, so let's talk about it from the firm ownership side. Yeah.
Yeah, just have a plan, implement it. I think to rely on, same for mentorship too, right? To rely on the employees to do that heavy lifting, I think is the easiest path of, well, I'm too busy doing business and I'm too busy shaking hands and getting new projects and leading things. But don't you want to grow your people and have the strongest team possible that's in the loop about things, that is excited to do the work? I think to give folks hope, to give them a plan, and then to help them work through that plan, even if you're a single person and then you're working with maybe like a junior drafts person. That person is probably not going to be a co-firm owner in 2 years, but maybe in 20 years or in 15 years. Just be like, well, I'm not at it right now, but perhaps if we grow, blah, 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 like this could be a potential plan. And talk about, maybe that person has no dream of that, so you don't have to worry about it. But I think to start those conversations of where do you want to be, what types of things are important to you, that will help you understand who you're working with and then how to make them a most effective team player.
Yeah. Open communication, being clear. Like you
always,
from the employee side, you should be clear what your next step is, and then from the employer side, you should know what each person wants, at least at a base level, right? So that you can help them get there, right? Encourage them, even if that means that, you can only take them, the first half of where they want to go, and then they're going to go somewhere else. Like, at least you get them in their best motivated state for that first half, right? And I think that's important to remember too. I'm curious, like, what have you seen, heard, and what are your thoughts on the transparency of these different levels, the transparency of the ladder, so to say? Like, is it something where, each employee should only be aware of like the rung that they're going after? Or is it something that's almost like it's visible, right? As part of the employee handbook and everyone can see it? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, so I think there's benefits, right? It comes down to, in the United States, we have a taboo around discussing salary and roles and all of those things. And I think that negatively impacts a lot of employees. In the past, I have shared my salary with my colleagues, and one person is always left very dissatisfied in that conversation of kind of like, you're what? Like, you're making that? Like, I'm doing, like, this makes no sense. So my opinion is share outside of your company, because then you're getting market information and you don't run that risk of now the person in the cubicle next to you is like very upset because of what you shared, or you're very upset because of what your neighbor shared. So I think that strengthens roles. But then, of course, right, like if I have so many years of experience, I'm licensed versus unlicensed. That's a huge indicator of how much you're paid or what offer you get. If you are more of like a manager side of things versus a technical side of things, that also, again, changes the pay structure. So architecture is a little bit complicated in terms of what everyone is getting in terms of compensation. So you really have to do the research and see, okay, I am a architect 3 with 10 to 15 years of experience. I'm licensed. I'm this, I'm that. I've done project management, whatever. And then do your research of what that role would earn. And you really have to pull a lot of data points for that, because it's hard to assess. There's not just like one easy title for that.
Yeah. I mean, do you think from an employer standpoint, right, for the different rungs, should it be clear what the expectations are, for each, like, should that be something that's visible and transparent, or should that be something that, is, again, it's more closed off and it's something that you don't show, and you only talk about like the next thing that someone is going after? Basically, like, should employees have a place where they can look and see what are the other, roles inside of the firm? What does it require to get there? So that I can kind of direct myself there.
Oh, yeah. I think that should be open and available for everyone. And maybe it's just a paragraph. Maybe it's a series of bullet points. But to know, okay, these are the options, right? Of this is where I am. This is who I'm working with. And these are the expectations I have from some of my team members. And then these are the expectations that my boss has of me. And these are the expectations I have of them. Like, I think that just helps kind of understand where everyone is. And especially if you're delegating work, like what you can expect or can't expect from others, it's good to be clear on that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I ask because I think it's easy to overlook, right? It's like you have especially if you're a smaller firm, let's say if you're like under 20 or under 10, you might not have those in place because maybe someone hasn't even taken up, one of those roles yet. So even if it's aspirational, it's probably important to have and important for you to think about, because eventually, the fact is, like, it's going to happen. Like, you run a firm for long enough, these different roles are going to have to be filled. And so thinking ahead on like what that looks like and what you're going to need to see, can't hurt. I'm curious, like you had mentioned a handful of factors, right? That employees care about when they're looking for a role, when they're looking for a promotion. And it was kind of like, it's salary, it's flexibility, it's title, it's these different factors. In your experience, what do employees care about the most out of those?
Oh, man. I can't answer for all employees.
Yeah.
I think it really depends. I don't think there is one answer. That's why there are so many different options. Because I think if there was a major one, then it would be like, oh, obviously salary is most important. But I was just talking with Bryce Batts on an episode of the podcast, and she was saying that someone turned down, I think it was like a 50,000 bump, because he wanted to have more flexibility to work from home, to be with his family more. So at some point, it's like that 50K might make a huge difference in someone's life. They would run to that. They would take any type of job for that bump. But other people are like, my family's more important, and that 50K is not going to, it's going to negatively impact my quality of life, and it's not worth it. So unfortunately, I cannot answer for everyone, but sometimes the title bump is all they need of like, hey, I'm doing all this work, like make me a project architect or make me an associate, make me a senior associate. And that is what is kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, we can do that. And there's not even like an impact to salary. It's really just you got to order new business cards. And those are like, what, $11 or something?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think that's a good answer. I mean, I think you do answer by saying it depends, right? It depends on each person. And to your point about how, complicated things have gotten, I think it's also happened. This is kind of what COVID did to us, right? It added some more complexity to, I think, the value ladder and how people evaluate things, because they realized, oh, maybe I do or don't enjoy working from home and having some flexibility there, or having a little bit more time, to work in my own space. And so these things might matter more. I forget, there was like, I feel like they come out like every month. I see some kind of, headline about, people care more about flexibility than they do about pay. And they would turn down pay if it meant that or they would take less pay for more flexibility or something like that. Right. And so I wanted to ask, because I was thinking about it even from my perspective, right, where there's been moments where, it's always nice to have a little bit like more money, like, that's great. Like, cool. I'll take more salary. But sometimes like, I just want the title. Like, just give me the freaking title. Like I need it for my ego, right? Help me feed my ego a little bit, to feel better about the things that I'm doing. And so it's important to have those conversations with your team to really understand, like, those factors that Caitlin is talking about, right? Like, which ones matter most to them, because it's going to be different for each person. And it's not something that you can assume, like, just because, money is maybe what matters most to you doesn't mean it's going to be universal throughout the rest of the team. And so, yeah, really, I think it's just like, understand your employees at an individual level is kind of, I feel like what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. And I think especially for hiring and also for retention, when you have those conversations of maybe an employee comes and they go, hey, I want that 50K raise. And you go, whoa, not in our budget. Like we can't offer that. What else can you offer that person? Can you give them maybe, healthcare benefits? Those probably can't change, on the annual basis. You got to figure that out. But maybe it's an extra day of PTO, or you can offer to sponsor them at a conference, or you can give them a few days off to study for their AREs. Different things that just kind of make life a little bit better, a little easier, where, I mean, you have to pick the right one. If someone's like, I want a salary increase, and you go, well, we'll pay for your gym membership. It's kind of like, okay, that was strange. Well, why did you suggest that? But you have to see what's important to the employee, talk to them, but what can you offer that maybe will make them a little bit happier? I mean, what I hear very often from employees or from, owners, leaders, managers, they go, we thought they were going to leave. We had just like this thought. And it's like, if you had that thought, what could you have done to keep them? If you didn't want to keep them and, as part of that like natural kind of cycle of people coming in and out, no harm done. But if they were a great employee and you really liked working with them and you saw them having a future at the company, wouldn't it be less expensive in the long run to retain them, to give them that extra day of PTO or make them an associate or whatever to keep them? So if you are having these conversations and someone is dissatisfied, start to barter with them, of like, well, okay, what can we do? We can increase your salary, or, oh, you want to work more in a certain realm, or you want to try business development, great. We'll give you opportunities to do those things to expand your scope of work from what you're currently working on. And I think that like retaining people, especially if they're good, that's like a huge benefit to the company.
1000%. Yeah, I love that example. Yes, I've heard the same thing. Yeah, we kind of knew they were going to leave. And
yeah.
On the other, like, okay, well, why didn't you do anything? Yeah, I mean, a perfect, rhetorical, natural rhetorical question. But I love what you're saying, because it's about, you have to compromise, right? You have to compromise at a certain level. And that's got to come from both sides, right? The employee probably has to compromise. The employer has to compromise. But the worst thing you can do, at least for talent that you genuinely want to retain, is nothing. Is sit back and say, it seemed like that was probably going to happen, right? Well, there's, to your point, there's so many things, right? It's swag, it's an extra PTO day, it's a little bit more flexibility, it's one more day that they can work from home a week. It's, there's small things that don't necessarily cost the company a significant amount of money, or even like heck, even, if it's like working from home, like maybe you're losing a little bit of efficiency, but that person is 10 times happier than what they were before. And it's like, well, that seems like an obvious payoff to me. Like, find the middle ground in that. So yeah, that's a great point. All right. So you've been doing a great job at speaking both to the employer and to the employee so far in our conversation. And so I'm curious when it comes to how to measure, right, progress, right? From an employee standpoint, I'm curious to know what things that they should be paying attention to know if they are, moving in the right direction, let's say, where they want in their career. And on the employer side, what are the numbers that they should be looking at to make sure that they are obviously retaining the right talent in the right way?
Okay. So I think on the employee side, you have to do that introspection on what do you want. I think we have all worked with someone who maybe they're like that super technical person and they live in the corner of the office and they have all the books around them and they do the same thing that they've been doing for the last 20 years and they're really good at it and they come in, they do what they're really good at and they're happy with that and then they go home. There is no movement, no goal to do anything else. I'm really good at this. I really like what I do. That's what I want. If you are that person, know thyself and figure out a way to get there. And then when you get there, great. Then maybe talk about if you want any other growth. But for other people who want to keep climbing, visualize what is at the end of that and how do you then get there. And I think to understand the metrics of am I progressing? Am I not? You have to talk to other people. You have to talk to people who are a few years ahead of you, people who are in the role that you want, and understand what steps did you take? Who did you talk to? Did you have to change firms? Did you have to, get additional education? And then you kind of create your pathway and then look to see, can I do this at my firm? Do I need to change jobs? What kind of conversations do I need to have to chart that out? And know that things will happen. There'll be layoffs, economic downturns. It's like if a firm loses a lot of their projects due to whatever, you're going to have to just be all hands on deck. Maybe you're a little bit off the path of progressing to that final goal. So build in that flexibility. But ultimately, I think people too, we don't talk about retirement. What is the end goal? Are we all going to be 90 years old working in architecture? Most of my family, we don't get past 80. So I'm like, I can't be working until I'm 80. I'd like to, enjoy retirement or whatever, live by some water somewhere. So it's like, when do I want to retire? Can I hit my goals to rise to leadership, to work on specific projects I want to work on by that time? To have that plan, which it changes, it evolves, but I think to have some idea of a plan and you can edit it over time, I think is really important. So then if you're hitting your personal goals, metrics, what kind of money do you need to retire? What kind of salary do you need to make? How are you saving that? Are you saving that? Those are all important factors of that final end goal in terms of career longevity.
On the employer side, what do you think they should be looking at as they're developing these structures and systems that you've kind of been talking about?
Well, I think too, we just talked about retirement, right? Are you going to own your firm forever? Yeah. Do you have an exit plan? What does that look like? In terms of employee metrics, I know you talked about earlier, right? If you're a solo entrepreneur, you hire one person. We don't have a list of all the different job titles or salary structures, all of that. But as you start to grow, are you looking back and analyzing, okay, these are the tiers of roles. Do we need to give people roles, rename, retitle? I've been at some firms where they're like, we're going to retitle some people just to have a little bit more hierarchy or organization, both internally, but also when clients are looking at our company, they know who to contact and it's clear. And then when you look at those things, how are salaries divvied up? Do you have a range for each of those types of roles? And I think this is very important. Not all people look at this and we don't really need to, but I think in terms of gender and race, equity, what does that look like, right? Is a woman at the same role or the same position as a man? Are they earning the same salary? What did they come in at? What kind of raises are they getting over time? And I think if we want to make the profession overall a more equitable place, it's important to things get off track. I'm not faulting anyone for that. There are many factors, societal mostly, that influence kind of inequities here.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But to have the knowledge to look at that and go, oh, we're a little bit off track. This is how we can fix that. I think that's very important to me. And I love when firm leaders look around and go, oh, we haven't been looking at this. We should pay attention to it. And if we need to make some corrections, then they can do that.
Caitlin, thank you so much. This has been such a refreshing conversation. And I think there's so much for everyone to gain if you're an employee or an employer. But like, I think at the core of it, it's, communicate more, right? Communicate better. Know thyself, as you said, and definitely know your employees at an individual level and understand where they want to go as well. Caitlin, where can people go to keep in touch with you?
Oh my gosh, I'm all over the internet. So if you want to connect with me directly, LinkedIn is probably the best spot for that. If you want to follow the podcast, it's called Architectette. So it's the word architect with E-T-T-E as the suffix. We are on Spotify, Apple, Instagram, LinkedIn. So you can follow, listen, see videos, all that stuff at all of those locations.
Perfect. Yes, everyone, go check out Caitlin with Architectette. And thank you so much again for joining us.
Thanks, Tyler.
All right, Growthatect, that is a wrap on this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy the podcast, then please take 30 seconds to share a review and tell me your favorite part so that I can keep making it better for you. And hey, if you want to work with me directly to increase your fees and start winning the biggest projects of your career, then send me an email at hello@growthatect.com with the word grow. That is it. Just email me the word grow at hello@growthatect.com and I will get you sorted out. All right, I'll see you next time, friends.